So do when the going from Matagi one man, one or two dogs to lordly parties with a whole pack of dogs. How did the Nihon Ken were they using the same types of dogs, and those dogs they can do it solo, but they can also pack up and work together as a team?
Yes, and I think, well, this speaks to a much larger subject, I think, which is probably a question that I do get asked a lot about how the Nihonken hunts or what kind of a hunter it is.
Hmm.
And I guess to put it simply, in terms that everyone would be kind of able to understand, they are a versatile hunting breed in kind of what you would, I guess, what the German breeds are considered versatile hunting breeds. We hunt everything with them here in Japan, and that's traditionally been the case. They've hunted everything from small game birds to large game bears, spores, deer. Um, but being a primitive breed, and then I get asked, how are they different from Western breeds? One thing I have finally begun to understand over the past couple of years, and this is something I just took for granted because I've only hunted with the Japanese breeds and a few pointers, is that the Japanese breeds tend to have the whole scale of hunting dogs in their hunting DNA. So you'll have dogs that sort of point,
Hmm.
and you'll have dogs sometimes that will bay on trail a bit. And you have dogs that are completely silent, hunting in a real primitive, what you would consider a Spitz type hunting style and baying up animals. So we do get this every once in a while. You'll see these outliers pop up. I think a lot more than, say, in a pointer where a breed has been bred to do a specific task.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting the parallel you make with German sort of what we call versatile hunting dogs, multi-purpose hunting dogs. That it's I think it's those dogs are maybe at the opposite end of the spectrum in that they're the far I don't know, you can push back on this. They're the farthest thing from primitive hunters in that they're highly bred, and they sort of do, they're mixed, but the it's interesting. The Nihon Ken, the pictures I see that you post and stuff, they look very similar to, not very similar, but they have a lot of the Spitz characteristics that you see in our. There's Native American reservations here, and where the dogs are feral essentially, and often revert to a lot of those what I consider primitive characteristics: the upturned tail, the pricked, erect ears, and when you see pictures of indigenous people wherever they are, whether it's in Norway, Sweden, Finland, or Canada or the United States 100 years ago, they tend to have dogs which they look sort of like the Nihon Ken but less refined, but that similar mold.
Yeah, I would agree. And there is that type that I think is just very close, probably, to what the original dogs were. And as far as just jumping back to what we were talking about with the hunting and the traits they have and the DNA they've got, I think what I'm seeing is if we considered a hunting dog and we put all hunting dogs and their abilities into one pie and said bird dogs have this very specific part of the pie that we selected for, which is to be birdie and to point, and then hounds have a different section of the pie that we selected for. What I'm seeing is these primitive breeds, especially like the Nihonken, tend to have the whole pie or most of it still in their DNA. So you'll sometimes get a more birdy dog. You'll sometimes
Hmm.
get a more, vocal dog or a dog with a better nose. And so it is quite interesting to see that for sure.
Hmm. So because what Shigeru is doing partially is that he's restoring or trying to preserve breeds of Japanese hunting dogs which have declined, and uh, it sounds like a lot of what you're pulling from are dogs which gene pools which haven't recently been used for hunting, or it's been a little bit diluted. It sounds like with these primitive dogs where it's very genetic, their hunting. I mean, all dogs, the hunting is genetic, but it sounds like, particularly in this case with what we're calling primitive dogs, do you feel that makes it easier for you to go and pull? Like, bloodhounds used to be really good scent hounds, but if I go and get bloodhounds from show dog breeders, which have been multi generational show dogs, I don't think my success rates are going to be high, but it sounds like with your dogs, they are.
Yeah, I would say that that is pretty much in a nutshell. That is the problem that we are up against, is that we're trying to preserve these heritage breeds essentially, and then basically what happened was about 100 years ago in the early 1900s, the well the nationalists of the time essentially realized that we were losing our Japanese heritage. We were losing these dogs. They were basically, all dogs back then were still very much off leash. They would wander around. So when Western breeds were imported, these new pointers, hounds, and big fighting dogs and things like this, they just started interbreeding with the native dogs, and we almost lost them at that point. So basically, they tried to preserve the remaining good pockets of quality dogs. And where they found them, actually, and the reason why these breeds survived, is because hunters in like remote villages of Japan, in the mountains. Japan is 75% mountainous terrain. We're talking thick jungle, high mountains. 75% of the country is that. So they found these dogs that were still pretty much, as close as possible to purebred Japanese dogs that were left, the Nihonken that were left. But the issue was, then they brought them out into the cities and tried to preserve them. And once you do that, like you were alluding to, a hunting dog that isn't being selected for hunting anymore very quickly starts losing its ability to hunt. We start losing those parts of the DNA. I do feel that because there was that whole pie, for instance, of different hunting styles and abilities left in these primitive breeds, that there was a lot more to possibly lose. And to be fair, these preservation societies in Japan have always stated that they wanted to preserve the hunting dog. But even if you want to preserve a hunting dog, the only people that can really preserve a hunting breed are hunters. And
Yeah.
that's what we've come up against, is we do start to lose that specific ability. And it is something that we are always trying to be aware of. And then right now we're at a stage in the breeds where some of them are so close to extinction. We have 200 puppies born a year and things like that. And with the Kishu Ken, for instance, which is one of the 6 Nihon Ken breeds, we've lost 50% of the population in the past maybe 10 years. We had about 600 puppies a year about 10 years ago, and now we're at about 300 last year, I think, or less.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just facing a massive population decrease, and we're trying to think about, well, who is going to be interested in preserving these breeds? And we want that to be hunters, essentially. So we're
Yeah.
trying to
And
select back again to increase the odds of a good hunting dog, a good hunting Kishu.
so, can you explain some of why you're seeing that decline? Is that decline in dogs, in hunting dogs, just mirroring the decline in the hunting population, or is it exceptional in terms of people are moving away from hunting with dogs, but still, hunting spot and stalk or something like that? And then, are many of the breeders like yourself hunting with their dogs, or would you say you're an outlier and most people are sort of breed preservationists who like the idea of the hunting dog, but they're not really using it for its function?
Well, I would say that yes, the most of the preservationists are breeding towards a standard that was set for the Japanese breeds, which includes a lot of necessary hunting dog traits, but we don't actually have a proper, and this would go back to what you were talking about with the German breeds. They have working dog trials that are a very big part of the standard there. We actually don't have a working standard for the Japanese breeds, which makes it kind of a bit difficult for someone who's not a hunter to try and select a dog that's going to hunt.